You know what's fascinating? The smartest people in the room are often the ones who accomplish the least. And before you think this is about laziness or lack of ambition, let me stop you right there. This is about something far more insidious, something that disguises itself as virtue, as conscientiousness, as doing things the right way. This is about the mental trap that brilliant minds fall into without even realizing it. The trap that makes them believe that thinking more equals achieving more. The trap that convinces them that one more revision, one more analysis, one more perspective will finally make them ready. But here's the truth nobody wants to hear. Your intelligence might be the very thing sabotaging your success. And in the next 15 minutes, I'm going to show you exactly how this happens, why it feels so comfortable, and most importantly, how to break free from it before it consumes your entire potential. Let's start with something you probably recognize. You're working on a project, something important, something that matters to you. You've done your research, you've gathered your data, you've outlined your approach. But then, just before you're about to execute, something stops you. A thought whispers, what if there's a better way? What if I'm missing something crucial? What if I haven't considered all the angles? So you pause, you go back, you research more, you analyze deeper, you consider additional perspectives. And this feels responsible, doesn't it? This feels like due diligence. This feels like you're being thorough, professional, smart. But here's what's really happening. You're not being thorough. You're being terrified. You're not being smart. You're being stuck. Because brilliant people have this unique curse. They can always see one more problem, one more complication, one more reason why now isn't the perfect time. And the more intelligent you are, the more convincing these reasons become. This is what psychologists call analysis paralysis, but that clinical term doesn't capture the emotional reality of what's happening. What's really going on is that your intelligence has become a defense mechanism against the vulnerability of action. Because here's the uncomfortable truth. When you're in your head analyzing, planning, considering you're safe, you're in control. You can't fail at something you haven't tried yet. You can't be judged for work you haven't shared yet. You can't be proven wrong about ideas you haven't expressed yet. Your potential remains infinite as long as it stays theoretical. But the moment you act, the moment you create, the moment you put something out into the world, you become measurable. You become vulnerable. You become real. And for brilliant people who have built their entire identity around being smart, being right, being exceptional, that vulnerability feels like death. Think about this dynamic in your own life. How many projects have you started and never finished because they didn't meet your standards? How many ideas have died in your notes app because the timing wasn't perfect? How many opportunities have you passed on because you needed more preparation? And here's the kicker, you probably justified every single one of these decisions with perfectly logical reasoning. You told yourself it was about quality. You told yourself it was about being responsible. You told yourself it was about doing things right. But was it really? Or was it about protecting yourself from the terrifying possibility of being average, of being wrong, of being human? Now let's go deeper into how this trap actually operates in your mind. There's a specific cognitive pattern that brilliant people develop, usually starting in childhood. As a smart kid, you probably discovered early on that you could think your way through most problems. While other kids were struggling with concepts, you were already 3 steps ahead. You learned that your value, your worth, your identity was tied to being the one with the answers. Your intelligence became your superpower, your shield, your entire sense of self. And this worked beautifully in structured environments like school, where problems had clear solutions and success had clear metrics. But then you entered the real world, where problems are ambiguous, solutions are messy, and success is subjective. And suddenly, your superpower became your kryptonite. Because in the real world, action beats analysis, iteration beats perfection, done beats perfect. But your entire nervous system is wired to resist this truth. Your brain has been trained for years to believe that more thinking equals better outcomes, that the smartest solution is always the best solution, that if you just consider one more angle, read one more book, wait for one more piece of information, then you'll finally be ready to act. But ready for what? Ready to succeed? No. Ready to succeed perfectly, without risk, without failure, without the messy, uncomfortable, undignified process of learning through doing. Here's where it gets really interesting. This mental trap doesn't just affect your productivity. It affects your entire relationship with yourself. Because when you're constantly stuck in analysis mode, when you're always preparing but never executing, when you're perpetually one step away from taking action, something insidious starts to happen. You begin to resent your own intelligence. You start to feel like your mind is both your greatest asset and your greatest prison. You look at people who are less intelligent but more successful, and you feel this confusing mix of superiority and envy. You think, if I were just a little less smart, a little less aware of all the complications, maybe I could just do things without overthinking them. Maybe I could just be happy with good enough. And this is where we need to address something crucial. This isn't about becoming less intelligent. This isn't about dumbing yourself down or ignoring potential problems. This is about understanding that intelligence without action is just expensive entertainment. It's about recognizing that your ability to see problems is only valuable if it's paired with the courage to solve them imperfectly. Because here's what nobody tells you. The goal isn't to eliminate uncertainty before you act. The goal is to act in the presence of uncertainty. The goal isn't to have all the answers before you start. The goal is to discover the answers through starting. Let me share something with you that might change your perspective entirely. Every successful person you admire, every brilliant mind who actually changed the world, every innovator who created something meaningful, they all had the same access to uncertainty that you do. They all saw the same problems, the same complications, the same reasons to wait. But they did something different. They didn't wait for certainty. They created it through action. They didn't eliminate risk. They managed it through iteration. They didn't achieve perfection. They achieved progress, and then more progress, and then eventually something that looked like excellence, but started as something deeply imperfect. Think about this for a moment. Every book that changed your life was probably written by someone who doubted every sentence. Every business that inspired you was probably started by someone who had no idea what they were doing. Every piece of art that moved you was probably created by someone who almost gave up 1,000 times. The difference between these people and everyone else isn't intelligence, it's not talent, it's not even confidence. It's the willingness to be temporarily incompetent in service of eventual mastery. It's the ability to tolerate the gap between where they are and where they want to be. It's the courage to suck at something long enough to get good at it. But here's where you might be thinking, okay, I understand this intellectually, but how do I actually break out of this pattern? Because understanding the trap doesn't automatically free you from it. And you're right. Awareness is necessary, but not sufficient. You need specific strategies, specific practices, specific ways of rewiring your relationship with action and uncertainty. So let's get practical. First, you need to redefine what intelligence means for you. Right now, your definition probably sounds something like this. Intelligence means having the right answers, making the right decisions, avoiding mistakes, maintaining control. But that's not intelligence. That's anxiety wearing an intelligence costume. Real intelligence in the modern world means something different. It means the ability to act with incomplete information, the ability to learn from feedback faster than you can plan for contingencies, the ability to iterate to experiment, to fail forward. It means being smart enough to know that thinking more doesn't always lead to better outcomes, and being brave enough to act anyway. Second, you need to develop what I call action bias. This doesn't mean being reckless or impulsive. It means creating a default setting in your mind that favors experimentation over analysis when the cost of trying is low and the potential learning is high. Ask yourself, what would happen if I just tried this and saw what happened? What would I learn? What's the actual worst-case scenario? And be honest here, not the catastrophic fantasy your anxiety is selling you, but the actual, realistic worst case. Most of the time, you'll realize that the cost of trying and failing is far lower than the cost of not trying at all. Third, you need to set action triggers. These are specific, predetermined conditions that bypass your analysis loop. For example, I will work on this project for 2 hours, then I will share it with one person, regardless of how finished I think it is. Or I will consider this decision for 24 hours, then I will choose and commit, even if I'm not 100% certain. These triggers remove the decision from your overthinking mind and place it in a predetermined system. They acknowledge that you'll never feel completely ready, and they give you permission to act anyway. Fourth, and this is crucial, you need to reframe failure. Right now, failure probably feels like evidence that you're not as smart as you thought you were. It feels like exposure, like humiliation, like proof that you should have prepared more. But failure isn't the opposite of success. It's the evidence of trying. It's the tuition you pay for growth. Every failure is just information. This approach didn't work. What should I try next? The only real failure is the failure to try, because that's the only failure you can't learn from. Here's something else to consider. Your need for certainty before action isn't protecting you, it's imprisoning you. Because while you're waiting for the perfect moment, the perfect plan, the perfect conditions, life is happening. Opportunities are passing. Time is moving. Other people, less intelligent but more action-oriented, are building, creating, failing, learning, and eventually succeeding. And you're still planning, you're still analyzing, you're still waiting for a level of certainty that doesn't exist and never will. Let me ask you something direct. What are you actually afraid of? Not the surface-level fear of failure or judgment, but the deep, core fear that's really driving this pattern. For most brilliant people, the real fear isn't failure. It's the fear of being ordinary, the fear that if you actually try your hardest and still don't succeed, it will prove that you're not as special as you thought you were. The fear that your intelligence is all you have, and if that doesn't guarantee success, then what does? This fear is so powerful because it touches your identity, your sense of self, your entire understanding of who you are in the world. But here's what you need to understand. Your worth isn't determined by your intelligence alone. Your value doesn't come from being right all the time. Your significance isn't measured by your ability to avoid mistakes. You are not your outcomes. You are not your achievements. You are not your perfect track record. You are a human being with inherent value. Regardless of whether your projects succeed or fail, regardless of whether people validate your ideas or dismiss them, regardless of whether you live up to your potential or fall short of it. And once you really internalize that truth, once you separate your worth from your performance, something magical happens. The stakes get lower, the pressure decreases, the need for certainty diminishes, because you realize that you can survive failure. You can tolerate imperfection. You can handle criticism. And when you can handle these things, you're free. Free to try, free to create, free to act without the crushing weight of needing everything to be perfect. Now, I want to address something that might be coming up for you. You might be thinking, but my high standards are what make me good at what I do. If I lower my standards, if I accept good enough, won't I become mediocre? And this is the most seductive version of the trap because it sounds so reasonable. But here's what you're missing. High standards and action aren't opposites. In fact, they're complementary. The people who produce the highest quality work aren't the ones who think about quality the most. They're the ones who create the most, learn the fastest, and iterate the most ruthlessly. They have high standards, yes, but they apply those standards through revision, not through prevention. They create bad first drafts. They ship imperfect version 1s. They put out work that makes them cringe, and then they make it better. That's how you achieve excellence, not by thinking your way to perfection, but by acting your way to mastery. Consider this perspective. Every hour you spend in analysis without action is an hour invested in theoretical knowledge that may or may not apply to reality. But every hour you spend in action, even imperfect action, is an hour invested in practical knowledge that is guaranteed to teach you something. Which investment has a better return? Which approach actually moves you forward? The answer is obvious, yet the trap persists because it feels safer to be theoretically right than practically wrong. Let's talk about what happens when you actually break free from this trap. When you start choosing action over analysis, when you embrace iteration over perfection, when you tolerate the discomfort of being temporarily incompetent. At first, it feels wrong. Your entire nervous system rebels. Every instinct screams that you're being reckless, irresponsible, unprofessional. You'll want to go back to the comfort of analysis, back to the safety of planning, back to the familiar prison of overthinking. But if you push through that discomfort, something incredible happens. You start to build evidence that action works. You see that your imperfect attempts yield results, feedback, learning. You discover that most of your catastrophic predictions don't come true. You realize that people respect messy progress more than perfect planning. And gradually, you develop a new relationship with uncertainty. Instead of seeing it as a problem to be solved before you can act, you see it as a condition to be navigated while you act. You stop waiting for clarity and start creating it through experimentation. You stop seeking permission from your analysis and start trusting your ability to adapt. You become, paradoxically, smarter by thinking less and doing more. Here's the final piece of the puzzle, the piece that makes all of this sustainable rather than just another temporary mindset shift. You need to understand that your intelligence is still valuable. Your ability to analyze, to see patterns, to anticipate problems, these are genuine strengths, but they're meant to serve action, not replace it. Your intelligence should be the tool you use to iterate faster, to learn from feedback more effectively, to adjust your approach more precisely. It should make your action more effective, not prevent you from acting at all. Think of it this way: a brilliant engineer doesn't design the perfect bridge in their head and then build it once. They design, build a model, test it, find the problems, redesign, test again, iterate continuously. Their intelligence doesn't eliminate the need for testing. It makes the testing more productive. That's the relationship you need to develop with your own mind. Use your intelligence to act smarter, not to avoid acting at all. So where does this leave us? You have a choice to make, and you're making it right now, in this moment. You can continue to use your intelligence as a shield against vulnerability, as an excuse for inaction, as a justification for waiting until conditions are perfect. You can keep telling yourself that you're just being responsible, just being thorough, just being smart. And you can wake up 5 years from now with a head full of ideas and a life empty of impact. Or you can choose differently. You can acknowledge the trap. You can recognize that your fear is masquerading as wisdom. You can decide that the discomfort of action is preferable to the safety of analysis. You can start choosing progress over perfection, iteration over planning, done over perfect. This isn't easy. This isn't comfortable. This isn't what your entire history of being the smart kid prepared you for, but it's what your future self needs you to do. Because your ideas deserve to exist in the world, not just in your head. Your potential deserves to be tested in reality, not preserved in theory. Your intelligence deserves to be used as a tool for creation, not an excuse for hesitation. You don't need more time. You don't need more information. You don't need more certainty. You need to act now, imperfectly, scared, uncertain. Because that's how every single person who ever achieved anything meaningful started. Not with confidence, not with clarity, not with certainty, but with courage. The courage to be temporarily incompetent in service of eventual mastery. The courage to risk being wrong in pursuit of being useful. The courage to trade the comfort of potential for the challenge of reality. So here's what I want you to do. Think about one thing you've been overthinking, one project you've been overplanning, one decision you've been overanalyzing. And I want you to take one action on it within the next 24 hours. Not the perfect action, not the complete action, not the final action. Just one small, imperfect forward motion. Send the email, make the phone call, write the first draft, share the idea, try the experiment, take the step, and pay attention to what happens. Not just the external result, but the internal shift. Notice that the world doesn't end. Notice that you survive the imperfection. Notice that action, even messy action, creates momentum, information, and possibility in a way that thinking never can. Your intelligence is not your enemy. Your need for certainty before action is. Your ability to analyze is not the problem. Your unwillingness to act without complete analysis is. You're not stuck because you're not smart enough. You're stuck because you're too smart for your own good, and you haven't learned yet that wisdom isn't about having all the answers. It's about having the courage to seek them through action, through experience, through the messy, imperfect, beautiful process of actually living your life instead of just planning it. The mental trap that prevents brilliant people from thriving isn't a lack of intelligence. It's an excess of it, untempered by the humility to acknowledge that thinking is not a substitute for doing. So stop thinking, start doing, stop planning, start trying, stop preparing, start learning, because your brilliance deserves to be tested in the real world, not preserved in the theoretical one. And the only way to break free from the trap is to choose action, right now, imperfectly, and see what happens. The world is waiting for what you could create if you stopped thinking about it and started building it. Don't make it wait any longer.